Hello Varlets, welcome back to another class build. Today we're going to take a look at the Cyber Mastiff Handler. This is probably the first build that I wanted to put together after I got my hands on the early access some months ago. This build will be using everything that we've learned from my Cyber Mastiff review video. So if you haven't watched that and you want to learn more about how your dog behaves, the talent and blessing interactions that it has, as well as the damage profiles for its attacks and abilities, then I suggest you go and check out that video. But for now, let's do some baseline comparisons first, so you have an idea on just how strong this build can make your dog. I have here a Crusher, which is one of the tankiest enemies your dog will ever have to face. And at base, your dog will take a very long time to bring it down. Unreasonably long, in fact. A second baseline test that I want to do is to also pick up remote detonation. So none of these talents interact with remote detonation. And I want to spawn a, what's it called? A Rager right on top of it. Oops. Here, now we have a Rager. And we're dealing about 50%, over 50% of its health. So that will be our baseline comparison for both before and after this build when it comes to killing Crushers and Ragers with remote detonation. So to start this build off first, I want to talk about the weapon selection. In my Cyber Mastiff review video, I did mention that one of the ways to buff up your dog's damage is by having a dog stick. In that video, I mentioned using an Arbites shock Maul as the weapon of choice. So in my case, I have one with Unyielding and Carapace for my perks. And for my blessings, I have Execution and High Voltage. Both of these will work with the dog because your dog's attacks always stagger, practically always staggers most enemies that it hits, except for monsters. And High Voltage will just keep proccing because of Voltaic Mandibles, which we will see later. But for my build, for this one in particular, and for my playstyle, my dog stick is actually my Shotpistol. I've made my range weapon the weapon of choice for when my dog is out and about and roaming. And that's because the way I play this build is I am more focused on special and range elite elimination. So I want to have my range weapon out most of the time. And I only swap to melee when I have to deal with Poxwalker hordes or have to hold back armor. So for that reason, my perks here are going to be Flag and Maniac. Maniac for specials, Flag for majority of the elites. For my blessings, the first one's going to be No Respite. This basically works the same as Execution because it's 20% damage on stagger, and your Shotpistol is a shotgun that has a lot of impact, and your dog's attacks also stagger very effectively as well. So this is a no-brainer. The second blessing, however, has options. And I've chosen pinpoint targeting, but let me just bring you through what is possible for the Shotpistol so you have an idea of how to build it in a more practical manner. The ideal blessing that balances both the Shotpistol's effectiveness and your dog's damage is going to be full bore. Landing all your pellets onto a single enemy will give you 20% strength, which affects both your Shotpistol's damage as well as your dog's damage output as well. You can also choose Death Spitter or where is Fire Frenzy. Both of these basically kind of work the same, but Fire Frenzy gives you up to 50% more strength, which is the highest scaling you can get for the Shotpistol. Of course, it is very dependent on whether or not you have enemies to actually build up the buff. You can take High Voltage as well, similar to the RBT Shock Maul, but although this is basically on all the time, similar to No Respite, the High Voltage doesn't benefit the Shotpistol, so this is kind of a throwaway blessing that is good because 25% damage is still pretty good, but you lose out on buffing up your Shotpistol. So if you are a practical person, I would recommend Full Bore. If you are more trigger happy, Fire Frenzy, and if you are quirky, pinpoint targeting. So with the weapons covered, let's go through Curios first. I have chosen 1 toughness and 2 health, and that's because I've also chosen to have 3 times 5% toughness on all of my Curios. That gives me an additional 15%, which acts as a 4th toughness Curio. I've also chosen to go 3 stamina regeneration because stamina is life. And for the last perk slot, that is entirely up to you. I happen to have corruption resistance on mine because I was doing blighted havocs. But you can add what you like. Gunner resist, block efficiency, anything that suits your fancy or for the mission that you are playing. So with both weapons and Curios covered, now we can start talking about how we build into that, knowing that in my case, the Shotpistol is my primary. So we're going to start with taking No Escape because we want to pick up this free 10% global damage, which will help in our buffing. We will take Razor Jaw Augment as well for the bleed. And here is where we can have some difference. So in my case, because I'm using the Shotpistol, I would take Man and Cyber Mastiff for the passive regeneration and the range damage boost to make my way into remote detonation. So this is how I usually play the build. But if you are going for a more melee-centric first, so your primary weapon for your dog stick is your melee, then taking Hammer of Judgment and Force of Will is a good choice. This will be part of the build anyway, but instead of taking Man and Cyber Mastiff, you can instead take Shield Plates, this toughness damage reduction node, and build into remote detonation. So it'll look something like this. But in my case, because again, I'm using Shotpistol, this is how my build will look like. Then we'll move into taking Arbitrator Armor and the all-important Voltaic Mandibles Augment. If you don't already know why this is a very important talent node, please watch the review video. It shows you in very, very clear footage about the difference that this one talent node can make. It also represents about 60 or 65% of your entire scaling, so make sure you pick it up. We then move to the right, taking Concussive, Suppression Protocol, and Breaking Descent. Breaking Descent is basically the only viable aura that will help boost your Cyber Mastiff's damage because of the amount of stagger that it can provide. We'll then move into Plasteel Plates and take Go Get 'em. I've talked at length about the effectiveness and the potential that Go Get 'em gives in the review video, and so we'll be using it here. Because I've picked this, our build is going to be very focused on taking out backline shooters and gunners, which are probably one of the more dangerous enemies in Havoc missions. But if you don't want your Cyber Mastiff to be running in the backline, then you are free to take Unleash Brutality as well. But for this, we will stick with Go Get 'em. Next, we're going to go down to Break the Line, and we're going to go all the way till we get Targeted Brutality for the additional cooldown. Break the Line is my choice over, say, Castigator Stance, because this, for a very, very short cooldown of 20 seconds, you get 25% global damage, which buffs not only yourself, but also allows Voltaic Mandibles to scale up as well. And so, as long as you keep using it, whenever it's off cooldown, your dog will get extra damage for free. We're also going to take Justified Measures, Arbites Revelatum. Both of these are global damage applications. This is basically on 90% of the game because of how easy it is to activate. This is free 15% damage and will probably show up more if you are melee-centric Arbites compared to mine, which is range, because this is like active maybe 6% of the time based on my uptime mod, but damage is damage. We're then going to move down into Execution Order, taking Zealous Dedication on the way. Now, as of this recording, Execution Order is still bugged, where it only counts the kills of your dog and not yourself. So, in other words, the active potential of Execution Order is currently limited right now. But even so, I'm still doing pretty well, even in my Havoc40 games. We're also going to take Mallocator for additional cooldown reduction for Break the Line. And we're going to take both Keeping Protocol and Not Far Behind. The damage from Keeping Protocol will allow you to scale up your damage against monsters. 30% extra damage over time through your Voltaic Mandibles is great. And Not Far Behind is very similar to No Escape, which is 10% damage and movement speed. In this case, just for pouncing, which your dog will be doing a lot. The other node is going to be Serrated Maul. This will allow your Cyber Mastiff to apply Brittleness on every enemy hit, which allows it to scale its direct damage and its indirect damage. This then leaves us with 4 more talent points. And these 4 points will be distributed based on the mission you are playing, as well as whether or not you are a melee-focused or range-focused handler. So in my case, because I am using my Shotpistol as my primary, I will take Ammo Belt for the additional ammo, and I will also take Street Smarts, Priority Endowment, as well as Monstrosity Hunter. This will buff up my Cyber Mastiff's damage substantially against Ogrins, which you will see later. This is just great for additional survivability when it comes to dodging, and having one more shot in my Shotpistol is very, very good for quality of life. Now, if you aren't a ranged focus handler like I am, then I would suggest taking Hold the Line, Drive Them Back, and Weight of the Legs. These two nodes work very well together because, especially if you're using the Arbites Shock Maul, because its push attack is also a horizontal cleave, and drive them back gives you even more cleave to hold back the enemies. Weight of the Legs is one of the best nodes you can get for buffing up both your melee damage as well as your Cyber Mastiff, because this is 15% global damage, which is only 5% less than Monstrosity Hunter, but this applies to everything. So this is great to have. The additional point that you have for this, I would probably take Target the Weak, because this helps you make use of Concussive, which allows you to apply the debuff even on something that you cannot normally stagger, like monsters, for example. So that's nice to have. At least I think it works that way. I might be wrong, but that's the theory at least. Now, if you don't want this node, or if you are facing a mission which has a lot of tox gas, then you can always take Rebreather. In my case, for my range one, if I'm facing a mission with tox gas, I would remove Priority Endowment and take Rebreather instead. This just makes life so much easier in those kind of missions where you don't really have to think too much about your health getting corrupted over time. That brings us to the end of the talent selection. With everything we've talked about, let's go put the build to practice. Okay, so we have a Crusher here, and I'm going to swap to my Shotpistol. I'm going to hold right click, because pinpoint targeting will start building up stacks, as you can see. So that will give me 40% extra power to bring down the Crusher. I'm also going to turn off invisibility so that Execution Order can mark the Crusher, so my dog can attack it now. Let's see how much more effective it is. Already you can see the first hit has brought it down by 30%, and the next hit will kill it. That is just how much stronger your dog is now, when previously it would take forever. Now it can bring a Crusher down in 2 hits, no problem. And even if you are following my build but decide not to use pinpoint targeting, you will probably kill it in 2, maybe 3 hits. If it's something like full ball, for example, or if you're using high voltage, I think you can probably still achieve the same thing. For example, if I swap to my dog stick, or rather not my dog stick, my Shock Maul, which has both Carapace and high voltage, this is probably what you'll get. The damage is slightly less because you don't have the same amount of power, but you can still basically bring it down within 3 hits, easy. And if you have additional buffs from a teammate, for example, Psyker having the aura, I'm not sure, does that actually stack? More testing required. But yes, our dog is significantly stronger right now as a result of the changes. Turning back on invisibility, and now we're going to test the remote detonation. So just now we brought a Rager down to just under half health. Now we're going to spawn him back right on my dog with a fully buffed up pinpoint targeting, just to see how much damage it can do. The Rager basically died mid-air. Yep, so the reason why I chose the Shotpistol is because even if you are blocking and you're not actually shooting anything yet, your dog still gets the bonus damage. And you can go around and just shoot enemies with the bonus. And yes, while you do lose the buff when you shoot, all it takes is about less than 1 second to build up damage that equates to high voltage. So it's not really a problem. And even if you run out of ammo and still hold ADS to block, you're still building up the pinpoint targeting stacks. And just to be sure that this actually is affecting the remote detonation, I'm going to release ADS, plant a Rager, and detonate. So you see it does a lot less damage now. The Rager doesn't actually die. So pinpoint targeting can really help buff up the damage of remote detonation, as well as the dog's general damage output. One more note. Sometimes, depending on your team composition especially, you might find that this build is going to struggle a little bit, especially on the high Havocs, say around 30 plus. I certainly did a little bit in Havoc 40. One good change that I found to help myself and my team was to exchange remote detonation for voltaic shock mines. So you can just go and take this toughness damage reduction node and get shock mines. The reason is because while your dog is very good at going into the back line to wipe out shooters and gunners, the front line is where you need to be, because you aren't going to join your dog at the back line with that many gunners gunning you down. You need to hold the front line as waves of armor and captains and monsters spawn. So voltaic shock mines allows you to buy more time for your team. And even the 15 seconds here can be make or break, because it allows maybe your Psyker to get its venting streak back up or bubble back up, allows your veteran to get a shout back up. Just enough time to make a difference, more so than remote detonation, which while it does a lot of damage, and that's really good, the crowd control it applies is insufficient. 3 of these equals to 1 shock mine, and when it push comes to shove and you need to buy as much time as possible, there's no better tool than the voltaic shock mine itself. So yeah, that is all I have to say about this build. Feel free to mix it up a little bit. This video is really to show you the potential of what it can look like if you min-max out your dog. And this is just probably one of the more quote-unquote optimal build paths you can take for this kind of build, and just to show you the potential really. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Varlets.